A warm glow filled the garden as fairy lights twinkled overhead. As I made my way through the crowd, I could hear laughter and conversation wherever I looked. The dish was full of canapés, looking as though it may fall at any second. The usual suspects, my college classmates, the most of whom were still unmarried and tenaciously defending their independence, were present at Lena's birthday celebration. And me, the one with the heavy stone already on my left ring finger, was me. A voice shouted behind me, "Hey, stranger!" I turned to find Lena embracing me firmly, her blonde locks bouncing. "Where have you been hiding?" I chuckled and pointed to the piled-high plate, saying, "Just avoiding social butterflies. Aside from that, happy birthday. Happy birthday, gorgeous. You look amazing." Her eyes glistened as she said, "Thanks. So, where's Mr. Perfect?" Well, Adrian. His name even sounded right. It was because of him that I left the single life behind early. We had met a few months prior at a friend's get-together, and I must admit it resembled something from a corny romance book. As we looked at each other across the room, the music stopped and we were left alone. He said, "Hey," his lips moving into a self-assured smile. "I don't believe we've ever met. Adrian is who I am." "I'm Maya," I said, with butterflies in my stomach. "Nice to meet you." We spoke for hours about everything and nothing that night. Unlike any person I'd ever met, he was unique. He had a clear idea of his future self at the age of 27, a family, a profession, the entire 9 yards. It was a welcome change from the Peter Pans around me who were terrified of commitment. At one point, his stare was fierce as he proclaimed, "I want kids. A whole bunch of them, and I wouldn't mind changing a single diaper." My heart leaped for joy. For me, having children was also a must. Being the only kid, my childhood fantasies were of a house full of small people and laughing. "Me too," I said, a sincere smile lighting across my face. A seldom found. That concluded everything. In the murky seas of dating, we were a rare pair who were on the same page. Our partnership took off right away. Dates became weekend trips, which became evenings spent watching movies together on his sofa. Adrian greeted me warmly and showed me around his family, who were a close-knit group. Susan, his mother, was very cozy. "Maya, family is everything," she would add, her eyes sparkling. "A woman's place is with her children, nurturing them, helping them grow." I have to admit that I agree. A year later, beneath the glow of the park lights, Adrian proposed with a straightforward diamond ring. My eyes filled with tears and I said, "Yes." Our little family-only wedding was lovely and tiny. After the honeymoon, things got serious. Ever the pragmatic, Adrian recommended that I remain at home and concentrate on raising our future children in a loving atmosphere. He would squeeze my hand and tell me to think of it as an investment. "I'll provide for the family. You concentrate on becoming the most amazing mother ever." The next 6 months passed in a blur of doctor's visits, 3 a.m. pickle and ice cream cravings, and never-ending discussions about baby names. The great day. Adrian was overjoyed. He bragged, "Pals knocked up," pretty much telling everyone we encountered that we were expecting. "We're expecting a small heir." His insistence on an heir always bothered me a little bit, but I ignored it, concentrating instead on the wonder that was developing inside of me. The big day finally came. After pushing for hours, there was quiet followed by a chorus of cries, both mine and the baby's. My finger was caught by a small, flawlessly wrinkled hand. I felt a wave of relief that was so strong it hurt. With a pleasant voice, the doctor declared, "It's a girl." There was a beat of quiet. My heart fell. Adrian then lumbered over, disappointment plastered on his face. It seemed unbelievable to me. While I was cradling our lovely daughter, feeling both fatigued and excited, Adrian could only manage an expression that suggested he had lost the championship game involving his beloved team. "A girl," he finally said in a flat, unexcited voice. "Well, there's always next time for a boy, right?" My heart grew heavier. I said, "Next time." With a shrug, he looked away from our daughter who was curled up in my arms. "Indeed, as you well know, we must have an heir. I have to continue the family name." I feigned a laugh. "We have an heir," I remarked, guiding him in the direction of the infant. "Observe her, Adrian. She is flawless." He nodded somewhat, but his gaze did not change. My in-laws, fortunately, told a different tale. Susan jumped into grandma mode as soon as she laid eyes on her granddaughter Grace. She cooed at her, fussed over her, and lavished her with plush animals and little outfits. "A petite damsel," she said, grinning. "Just what this family needs." Adrian remained cool toward Grace at first. His gaze would frequently wander to some far, invisible location as he would hold her awkwardly. He used to say things like, "What a lovely blossom. You have to handle her delicately. Alternatively, it's unfortunate that she can't act a little rough and tumble like a boy." Every comment gnawed away at my happiness. Was it unreasonable of me to hope that my spouse would adore our daughter, gay or straight? However, the reality was revealed a year later when the physicians verified that I would not be able to conceive any more children because of health issues. Adrian's disillusionment transformed into something more sinister, an enduring stream of animosity that seeped into our existence. Like ice cream melting on a sweltering summer day, 8 years flew by. My tiny miracle, Grace, grew into a bright, self-reliant youngster. She had a mind sharper than a chef's knife at 8 years old. She loved gadgets, could cook better than most adults, and her French was as smooth as a bubbling stream. She had prepared a 3-course French feast for her grandparents, Susan and George, only a week prior. With wide eyes and tantalizing taste buds, they sat there while Grace proudly displayed each dish. Susan said, wiping her lips with a tissue, "Grace, this is amazing. You're a natural." A guy of few words. George just nodded yes, but the sparkle in his eyes spoke more than words could. She won another prize the same week, this one for the junior high school competition's most delectable handmade food. Adrian was not deterred. His meek congratulations was followed by his typical retreat into the den, where he would enter whenever Grace's accomplishments seemed to be taking center stage. Tears filled Grace's large brown eyes as she constructed a grand Lego castle on the living room floor one evening. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy seem happy about my stuff?" She sniffed, her bottom lip quivering. My heart hurt. This was hardly a novel concept. For years, Adrian's disregard for Grace had been a source of irritation for me. I used to ignore it, reasoning that he wasn't very adept at showing affection. However, a powerful protectiveness shot through me when I saw Grace's brilliant eyes clouded with confusion. "Hey, sweetie," I said as I bent down to give her a hug. "It's nothing to worry about. Your father adores you much. He just doesn't know how to express it, to put it mildly." Once Grace had fallen asleep that evening, I went up to Adrian. He was leaning back on the couch and glancing through sports channels as a beer teetered on the coffee table. "Adrian," I remarked in a frustrated tone of voice, "we need to talk about Grace." His demeanor was a mix of defensiveness and irritation as he glanced at me. "Observe," he uttered in a rough voice. "I give it my all, okay? I provide a roof over her head and pay the bills. Is that not sufficient?" "She is desperate for your acceptance and encouragement," I replied, my voice quivering with rage. "The least you can do is pretend to be interested." Adrian let out a deep, long sigh that seemed to engulf the entire space. "All right," he whispered. "I'll try, but don't expect miracles." Adrian and Grace's communication over the next few days was tight. Though with a false civility that made me uncomfortable, he would question her about school. However, it like seeing a bear attempt to waltz. The months blended together. Adrian's attempts to develop a close relationship with his daughter diminished and were replaced with a cold civility. However, he was starting to have strange late nights. After nightfall, smelling strongly of perfume that wasn't mine, he began to trickle in. His lame explanations included business meetings, being late, and highway traffic congestion. Every justification seemed like a blow to the face. I made the decision to approach him one evening while Grace was sound asleep and the clock was getting closer to midnight. With a smug smile on his face, he walked in the door, exhausted but confident. I said, "There you are," in a voice tense with repressed rage. "Have you been somewhere? All night long, Grace has been inquiring about you." He gave me a patronizing glance. He said, "Look, honey," his annoyance evident in his voice. "It's okay, I carry the bacon home. You spend the entire day sitting here. What real-world knowledge do you possess?" My teeth tightened. This man had the gall to shove it back in my face, the same man who had recommended I become a housewife. The days that followed were a tight waltz between boiling fury and stillness. Adrian withdrew even further and spent an increasing amount of time away from his house. He even began to dress differently, donning more fashionable attire and exuding a haughty demeanor that annoyed me. His hair has also altered to a more modern cut that appeared to be intended to remove years from his face. Going for a new look, huh? One morning, unable to suppress my curiosity, I made a comment. He gave me a toothy smile, the type he no longer gave me. He muttered, "Work thing," dodging my stare. There was a great weight to the falsehood. With a grin on her face and a crumpled piece of paper in her fingers, Grace virtually bounced into the home one day. She chirped, bouncing on the balls of her feet, "Mommy, guess what?" My pride grew within me. My tiny genius had a talent for gathering accolades. What was it this time? Another victory in a coding competition, a flawless grade in a scientific course. "What is it, sweetie?" I took the paper, knelt before her to ask. "I've won the school's Mind Games championship," she said, her pleasure visible in every word. "I'm the smartest child in my grade," they said. I sprang with pleasure and gave her a bare embrace. "Grace, it is incredible. I have faith in your ability." We should have celebrated this win. However, what? A classy dinner, a visit to a theme park. Those choices seem so trite for a brain as sharp as Grace's. That afternoon, when Grace got out of her coding session, I had an idea. Yes, I gave her a sleek, brand-new smartphone as a surprise when she was 8 years old. When she opened the gift, her eyes sprang wide with surprise. "A new phone. Mommy, a phone for me." "For you," I said, confirming with a wink of the lips. "You've worked so hard, and I think this could be a great way for you to explore your interests even more." With a sense of reverence, she grasped the phone and traced the smooth surface with her fingertips. She took pictures, edited them using built-in filters, and even downloaded a few educational applications once she quickly learned how to use it. "I'm grateful, Mommy." She threw her arms around me and shouted, "This is the best gift ever." A stab of remorse shot through my chest. Adrian would not stop talking about how I was pampering Grace. This would not even somewhat please him. However, Grace's happiness muffled that voice. "Just promise me one thing, okay?" I said, keeping my eyes on her. "Don't discuss the phone with Daddy. He may become enraged." Grace, the ever-loyal daughter, gave a sincere nod. "Mommy, my lips are sealed. This is our little kept secret." After a week, a sliver of optimism appeared in our tense home, but it was as fleeting as a firefly in the night. For the first time since he started his late-night routine, Adrian brought up Grace in conversation. Not simply a cold, "How was school?" but an actual effort to establish a connection. One evening, he threw a faded baseball cap on the table and said, "Hey, would you be interested in joining me this weekend for a camping trip?" Just the two of us. By the campfire, we may bake marshmallows and tell spooky stories. Grace had a Christmas light-like glow in her eyes. "Are you serious? Simply the two of us?" "Yeah," Adrian said with a tad of discomfort. "Figured it's about time we bonded. You and your old man." My gut constricted with a knot of fear. I shuddered to think of Grace going into the woods with Adrian, a man who couldn't tell a compass from a calendar. But Dad, what about things like bears? Don't the mountains harbor wild creatures? Adrian chuckled, a humorless sound. Kiddo, don't worry. I'll keep you safe from any wolves or bears that happen to sniff around. My chest throbbed with my heartbeat. The entire concept of going camping seemed like a bad one. Nevertheless, the words died in my throat as I saw Grace's delight sparkle in her eyes. They packed their backpacks for the weekend. A little flicker of optimism clashed with a worried flutter in my gut. Perhaps, just possibly, this journey might serve as the link they needed to strengthen their bond. As Sunday night came to an end, a dull grey sky covered the sky, reflecting the mounting sense of dread within me. With a panicked look on his face, Adrian stammered through the door by himself. "Maya," he said in a raspy voice, "I have something I must tell you. Grace is here. I let her go." The entire world was skewed. Lost her. My voice was just a whisper as I echoed, "What do you mean, you lost her?" He raised his head, begging with red-rimmed eyes. "She got lost when we were trekking in the mountains. I looked everywhere and yelled for her, but..." My anger shot through me, burning brightly. "You just got home, too. Why didn't you make a police report?" "I am scared," he said, his voice breaking. "Scared they'd think..." "Think what?" I yelled, a terrible calm permeating my voice. "That you're a neglectful father who lost his own daughter." Tears poured down his cheeks, but they didn't really put out the fire that was burning within of me. I said, "I'm calling the police," and picked up the phone. "They can start searching right away." After making a panicked phone call, sirens could be heard far away, serving as a glimmer of hope amid the approaching darkness. When my in-laws showed up, their worried expressions were hard to get through to me because I was still so terrified. With every minute that passed, the excruciating wait continued to drag on forever. With his phone tightly gripped in his palm and his eyes fixed on the screen, Adrian was snuggled up on the couch. I was watching him when my blood pressure shot up. A smoldering wrath was concealed by a distant composure. This wasn't a real concern. This wasn't a worry. It was something completely different. I felt a shockwave go through me. Grace's mobile phone. Grace's phone. I let out a scream as the revelation hit me like a blow to the face. She owns a GPS-equipped phone. Adrian's expression became colorless. His phone fell to the ground with a crash, showing a text exchange full with adorable emoticons. Disregarding the nauseating churn in my stomach, I reached for my phone and called Grace. It went unanswered. With shaky palms, I held onto a frail hope that was eroded by each unanswered ring. With a sense of renewed urgency in their voices, I informed the search team of the information. "I'm hoping that little phone, which represents my alleged excess, will be the key to getting Grace back home." An hour turned into what seemed like an eternity. The tense stillness was broken by a crackling of static on the walkie-talkie. "We found her," a voice, hoarse with relief, said. "She is secure and unharmed." A few moments afterward, the front door exploded, showing a team of rescuers with a little bundle that seemed to be Grace. Grace's face was covered in fatigue and filth, but she was alive and well. With tears running down their faces, my in-laws wrapped their arms around her. I tucked my face into her hair and participated in the embrace. My spirit was soothed by the aroma of fresh air and pine needles. Upon eventually drawing away, I saw Grace's lovely brown eyes. "Why didn't you answer your phone, sweetheart?" With a rich, emotional voice, I questioned. With a tinge of rebellion in her little voice, she shrugged. She said, "I was afraid it would die, so I just stayed put and waited for them to find me on the GPS thing." At the age of 8, she is already exhibiting a level of intelligence that surpasses even her father. I looked at Adrian, who was standing uncomfortably off to the side, like a ghost at his own daughter's homecoming celebration, and felt a pang of shame that quickly turned into a fury. "Well, aren't you going to say something?" My voice filled with hatred, I spat. "Hey, sweetie, welcome home. I'm relieved that you are no longer wandering in the woods." Adrian winced at what I said, but said nothing. Sensing my hostility, Grace wriggled free of my hug and moved in his direction. "Daddy," she murmured in a quiet yet distinct voice, "why did you leave me all alone in the mountains?" A thin, phony smile spread across Adrian's lips. With a strained voice, he said, "Just a little test, champ. See how brave you are." Grace, who was 8 years old, showed wisdom beyond her years. Her head was cocked, her eyes fixed. "No," she clarified. "You left me on purpose." Adrian let out a strangled laugh. "Kiddo, stop being so dumb. Why would I act in such way?" "Because you don't like me," she said matter-of-factly, her tone without any reproach. "You never wanted me." My throat tightened each breath. The unadulterated and bare truth loomed large in the atmosphere. Adrian's cheeks turned red. Like an animal in a corner, his eyes darted all around the room. "That's not true," he blustered, desperation evident in his voice. "You're just a stupid kid making stuff up." Grace snapped back, her little form bristling with indignation. "Don't call me stupid." Ever the broker of peace, Susan stepped in. "Adrian, that's enough," she yelled in an unexpectedly harsh tone. "Let Grace speak." Adrian started to object, but his father's withering gaze cut him down. George murmured, "Grace, darling," in a soft voice. "Can you tell us what happened?" With her grandfather's encouragement, Grace felt more confident and took out her phone, the very one I had given her as a covert present. "I have proof," she said, her voice booming with self-assurance. A couple touches on the screen brought a woman's voice into the space. It cooed into the phone, all sweet and enticing. Grace had taped the talk rather skillfully. "You're fine, honey," the voice said. "We'll be together soon. Simply get rid of her for good." My face started to bleed. The sound of my heart thumping against my chest contrasted with the icy quiet that ensued. "What? What is this?" My voice was almost a whisper as I stuttered. My father-in-law turned to confront Adrian, a look of frustration mixed with rage. "What does this mean, son?" Confronted and vanquished, Adrian fell to his knees. His face was dripping with tears. The painstakingly built facade came apart, exposing the ugly truth. He revealed all of his secrets, including a vile story of a desperate relationship and vicious ambition. He disclosed that his mistress was expecting his son, the inheritance he had always desired. She would not marry him, however, not while he was married to someone else and had a kid whose alimony payments would deplete his savings. They had devised an evil scheme to get rid of Grace, the thing preventing them from achieving their goal. A raw, merciless beast of fury screamed through me. The man who had held my hand at the altar and with whom I had lived my life was actually a monster. When I defined my voice, it was a low growl. I spat out "police," reaching for my phone. With a desperate tone in his words, Adrian surged at me. "Please, Maya, you're not comprehending." From a distance, the siren's sorrowful cries announced the arrival of justice, although a bit late. Adrian fell to the ground as the police stormed into the home. His cries for forgiveness were ignored. The weeks that followed were a haze of court hearings, lawyer conferences, and police interviews. Grace stood her ground. Bless her noble heart. She described what had happened in the mountains, exposing her father's brutality with a steady, firm voice. The cornerstone of the prosecution's case was the tape found on her phone, which attested to his heinous scheme. The media went crazy about the trial. With painted nails and a heart as frigid as ice, Adrian and his mistress pointed fingers at one another in an attempt to assign blame, but against the weight of the evidence, their falsehoods were as thin as tissue paper. Slow as it was, justice eventually won out. Adrian was found guilty of attempting to kill his mistress. The judge, a hard-bitten lady with cold, steely eyes, gave them a heavy punishment. Years in prison would be their punishment, but it was a tiny price to pay for the horrific deed they had planned. It was a hollow win in terms of monetary recompense. The terror that had suffocated me during the excruciating hours following Grace's abduction was a scar that money could never heal. However, it was a symbolic penalty that served as a reminder of the life that they had so ruthlessly attempted to put out. Adrian's own family delivered what was maybe the most gratifying blow. George and Susan officially rejected their son, with expressions of deep disappointment on their cheeks. Their steadfast support was a comfort to our hurting hearts as they stood by Grace and me. The ghosts of the past followed Grace and me as we went. It wasn't simple. My sleep was being torn apart by dreams. However, as the day brightened, and as he laughed with Grace, the darkness grew lighter. A mother's love is passionate and unyielding, and it can overcome even the most horrific betrayals. I realized this as I held Grace close, her little body warmth serving as a beacon of hope.
I never imagined that the person I trusted the most would betray me in the most unimaginable way. I was 32 when the truth came crashing down on me. My sister, the one I grew up with, sharing secrets and dreams, had committed the ultimate betrayal. It was a chilly autumn evening when I stumbled upon the truth. William, my then fiancé, had left his phone on the kitchen counter. A message popped up, glaring at me with harsh reality. It was from my sister. The message was clearly not meant for a brother-in-law. My heart sank as I read the words. I miss you. I can't wait for our little family to be complete. Confronting William was a blur of tears and disbelief. Why her? Why my sister? I remember asking, my voice trembling. William couldn't meet my highs. It just happened. I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you, he muttered. His apology sounded hollow, a feeble attempt to mend a wound too deep. The pain was unbearable. But what came next was even worse. It was a confrontation I had dreaded but couldn't avoid. I went to my sister's house, my mind swirling with anger and hurt. The door opened, and there she stood, her eyes betraying a flicker of guilt. Is it true? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She sighed, looking down at her swollen belly. Yes, it's true. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice laced with remorse that did little to soothe my pain. Sorry? You destroy my life, and all you can say is sorry. I couldn't contain the bitterness in my voice. She reached out, but I recoiled. Please understand, it wasn't planned. I never meant to fall for William, she pleaded. But you did, and now you're carrying his child. Another one, I said, the reality sinking in. The conversation that followed was a blur of tears, excuses, and apologies, none of which could undo the betrayal. I left her house with a heavy heart, knowing that our relationship could never be the same again. I had lost not just my fiancé, but my sister too. In that moment, I made a decision. I would cut her out of my life completely. The weeks following the revelation were the hardest of my life. The betrayal left a gaping hole in my heart, one that seemed impossible to heal. I was engulfed by a mixture of anger, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of loss. It wasn't just about losing William, it was the profound betrayal by my sister that cut the deepest. I remember the day I decided to cut ties. It was a decision that felt both heartbreaking and necessary. My family had gathered at our parents' house, a place that once felt like a sanctuary of warmth and love, now tainted by the betrayal. My mother approached me cautiously, her eyes filled with worry. Honey, I know you're hurt, but she's still your sister. Maybe with time. I cut her off, the bitterness evident in my voice. No, Mom, there's no maybe here. She's not my sister anymore. Not after what she's done. My father, usually a man of few words, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. We understand your pain, but she's family. Family sticks together, he said softly. I shook my head, tears brimming in my eyes. Family doesn't do what she did. She made her choice, and now I'm making mine. I can't. I won't have her in my life anymore, I stated firmly. My parents exchanged a sorrowful glance, the weight of my words hanging heavily in the air. I stood up, feeling the need to assert my decision further. I expect everyone to respect my choice. I don't want to hear about her. I don't want to see her, and I certainly don't want her to be a part of my life in any way. My mother reached out, her voice trembling. But she's your sister, she interjected. I interrupted, a firm resolve in my tone. She was my sister. She's nothing to me now. The room fell silent, the finality of my words settling like dust. I walked out of that room knowing I had closed a significant chapter of my life. It was more painful for my family to witness this rift, But for me, it was a necessary step to move forward. As I drove away from the house that day, I felt a strange mix of relief and sorrow. I was leaving behind a part of my life, a part of who I was, but I knew deep down it was the only way to heal, to rebuild myself from the ashes of betrayal. 2 years had passed since the day I decided to sever ties with my sister. Life, as it tends to, moved on in its unpredictable rhythm, leading me to paths I never imagined I would tread. Among these was meeting James, the man who would eventually become my husband. James and I met at a mutual friend's party. I wasn't keen on attending, still nursing the wounds of my past, but something about that evening felt different. It was there, amidst laughter and casual chatter, that I saw James for the first time. He had a kind smile and eyes that seemed to understand the world in a way few did. We hit it off instantly, talking for hours. It was during one of our deep conversations that I decided to open up about my past. I had a pretty rough breakup, I started hesitantly. My ex-fiancé and my sister, they betrayed me in the worst way possible. James listened intently, his expression one of understanding rather than pity. I know something about betrayal myself, he shared. My brother, believe it or not, had a habit of getting involved with my exes. I guess some siblings just don't understand boundaries. There was comfort in finding someone who understood the pain and complexity of such betrayals. Our shared experiences drew us closer, and before we knew it, we were inseparable. Our relationship blossomed into something beautiful and solid. When James proposed, it was under a sky full of stars, at the very spot where we had met. "You've brought light into my life in ways you can't imagine," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Will you marry me?" Tears of joy rolled down my cheeks as I nodded, whispering, "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Our wedding was a small, intimate affair, surrounded by those who truly mattered. As I walked down the aisle, my heart felt lighter than it had in years. The pain of the past was still there, but it was overshadowed by the hope of a new beginning. James and I soon started a family, welcoming 3 beautiful children into our lives. They were a constant source of joy and laughter, filling our home with love and warmth. In those moments, holding my children or looking into James's loving eyes, I realized how far I had come. The betrayal that had once seemed like the end of my world was now just a distant memory. It had led me to this new life, a life filled with love, trust, and happiness. I once thought I had lost everything forever. Life with James and our children was blissful, a stark contrast to the turmoil of my past. However, the world outside our little haven continued to spin, and with it came news of my sister and William that I couldn't avoid. One evening, as James and I were putting the kids to bed, he mentioned, "I heard something about William today. He had an accident at work. Quite serious, I believe." I paused, a complex mix of emotions bubbling inside me. "Oh, and how did you hear about this?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Mike from the office. You remember him, right? He's William's colleague," James explained. "And my sister?" The words left my lips before I could stop them. Part of me didn't want to know, but another part, the part that still remembered her as my sister, cared despite everything. "She's struggling, to say the least. With William's disability and her own health issues, things aren't looking great for them," James said gently, understanding the weight of his words. I sighed deeply, feeling conflicted. "Thank you for telling me, James." The news of their hardship stirred something in me. Despite the pain and betrayal, I couldn't completely erase the fact that she was once my sister, someone I loved and cared for. But the wound was still there, a reminder of the line she'd crossed. A few days later, my mother called. I could sense the hesitance in her voice. "Dear, I know you don't want to hear about her, but your sister is in a bad place right now. With William's condition, they're struggling to even feed the girls," Mom said softly. I felt a tug at my heart, thinking of the innocent children caught in the middle of this mess. "I need to think about this, Mom. I can't promise anything," I replied. After the call, I sat down with James, pouring out my conflicted thoughts. "They're innocent in all this, James, the kids, but helping them means opening a door I've closed a long time ago." James took my hand, offering a comforting squeeze. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember, you don't owe them anything. Your first responsibility is to yourself and to our family." His words were a balm, a reminder of the new life I had built, a life far removed from the shadows of my past. I lay awake that night, pondering over a decision that felt impossible to make. My heart ached for the children, But was it enough to risk the peace I had fought so hard to find? The dilemma of whether to help my sister and her family weighed heavily on me. James noticed my unrest and often asked if I was all right, but I found it hard to articulate the storm brewing within. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, the phone rang. It was my father this time, his voice weary, a tone I wasn't accustomed to hearing from him. "Your sister and William are in a tight spot. They asked if we could take in the girls for a while," he said. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "And what did you say?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're considering it, but they also asked if you and James might help," he replied. I was silent for a moment, digesting his words. "Dad, I don't think I can do that," I finally said. There was a pause on the other end. "I understand, but they are just kids. They shouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes," he said gently. "I know, Dad. I know, but it's not just about the kids. It's everything she did, everything she took from me," I replied, my voice strained with emotion. "We just thought, maybe for the sake of family," he began. "Dad, some wounds are too deep. I'm sorry. I can't," I said, hanging up the phone, feeling a mix of frustration and guilt. James reached across the table, covering my hand with his. "It's okay to say no. You've been through a lot," he said softly. I nodded, grateful for his support, but still tormented by the decision. A few days later, my sister reached out directly, a message appearing on my social media. Her words were desperate. "I know what happened between us, but I need you. The girls need you. We're family, after all." I stared at the screen, her words echoing in my mind. Family. That word had lost its meaning when she betrayed me. I replied, my fingers typing with a resolve that surprised even me. "What we had as family ended a long time ago. I'm sorry, but I can't help you." She responded quickly, a hint of bitterness in her words. "How can you be so cold? They're just kids, and they have their parents and grandparents. I have my own family to think about," I wrote back, my heart racing with a cocktail of emotions. The exchange left me drained. It was one thing to say no to my parents, but quite another to deny my sister directly. Yet I knew in my heart it was the right decision. My loyalty was to the family I had built, the family that stood by me when my world fell apart. That night, as I tucked my children into bed, their innocent faces a stark contrast to the complexity of the adult world, I knew I had made the right choice. My duty was to protect them, to ensure their world remained unscathed by the shadows of my past. Despite my clear message on social media, my sister refused to take no for an answer. A few days later, she tried to contact me again, this time through a more direct approach. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard the familiar tone of an incoming video call. Hesitantly, I accepted the call, and there she was, my sister, her face worn with stress and worry. "Please, I'm begging you. We're at our wits' end here. William can barely move, and I'm struggling to keep up with everything," she pleaded, her voice cracking with desperation. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "I told you already, I can't help you. I'm sorry. But we're sisters," she insisted, tears welling up in her eyes. "Remember how we used to dream of our future together? How we promised to always be there for each other?" "That was a long time ago, before you made your choice," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. She was silent for a moment, then said, "It's not just about us anymore. It's about the girls. Don't they deserve a chance?" I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memories of betrayal. They do deserve a chance, but not at the cost of my family's peace. You have other people who can help. She sobbed openly now, her face a portrait of anguish. "I never meant to hurt you like this. I was just lost." "We all make choices, and we have to live with the consequences," I replied, my voice firmer than I felt. The call ended with her in tears and me in a state of emotional exhaustion. I turned off my phone, not wanting any more intrusions into the life I had painstakingly rebuilt. James found me sitting at the kitchen table, my head in my hands. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I looked up at him, grateful for his presence. It was my sister. She's trying to guilt me into helping them. He sat down beside me, taking my hands in his. "You don't owe her anything. You've suffered enough because of her actions. It's okay to think of yourself." I nodded, drawing strength from his words. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized that my sister's pleas had only strengthened my resolve. I had moved on, and I couldn't let the ghosts of my past disrupt the life I had so carefully built. The decision to stay away from her was not just a choice, but a necessity for my own well-being and for the sake of my family. My decision not to help my sister and her family was met with mixed reactions from my relatives. Some understood my stance, but others, particularly my extended family, viewed it as heartless. The subject came up during a family gathering at my parents' house, a setting that once felt like a refuge, but now seemed more like a battleground. As we sat around the dinner table, my aunt, always one to speak her mind, broached the topic. "I can't believe you're turning your back on your own niece and nephew. They're just children," she said. I felt all eyes on me, the weight of their judgment heavy in the air. "It's not a decision I made lightly," I started, trying to keep my voice calm. "But there's a lot of history there that can't be ignored." "But they are innocent in all of this," my uncle chimed in. "Shouldn't they be spared from the sins of their parents?" I understand that, and I sympathize with them, but being involved with my sister again, even indirectly, is something I can't handle. "It's a boundary I've set for my own well-being," I explained. My mother, always the peacemaker, tried to soften the atmosphere. "Let's not forget what she went through. This isn't an easy situation for anyone." The conversation shifted, but the tension lingered. Later, in the kitchen, my cousin approached me. "I get that you're hurt, but don't you think this grudge has gone on long enough? She's family, after all." I leaned against the counter, feeling a familiar frustration rise within me. It's not just a grudge. What she did changed everything. I've moved on, and I can't go back to that dark place again. My cousin shrugged, a clear sign of disagreement, and walked away. As James and I drove home that night, the silence in the car was a stark contrast to the cacophony of the family dinner. He finally broke the silence. "Your family means well, but they don't fully understand what you went through, and that's okay. You don't have to justify your feelings to anyone." His words were a balm, soothing the sting of the evening's events. I realized then that family isn't just about blood relations, it's about who stands by you, understands your pain, and respects your decisions. James was my family, and with him, I had found a haven of understanding and acceptance. The backlash from my relatives was just noise compared to the symphony of support I had in him. The aftermath of the family gathering left me in a contemplative mood. I found solace in the nursery, watching my children sleep peacefully, unaware of the complexities of adult relationships. James joined me, wrapping his arm around my shoulder. "You've been quiet since we got back," he observed softly. I sighed, leaning into his embrace. "It's just, everyone thinks I'm being unreasonable, but they don't understand how deep the hurt goes. They might never fully understand, and that's okay. You have every right to protect yourself and our family," he reassured me. His words reminded me of the safe haven we had built together, yet the family's words echoed in my mind, stirring a whirlpool of doubt and guilt. A few days later, I found myself at my parents' house, helping my mom with some chores. She seized a quiet moment to speak her mind. "You know, your sister called me crying the other day," she said, her voice tinged with concern. I paused, the dishcloth in my hand momentarily still. "Mama, she's really struggling, and those kids." My mom's voice trailed off, laden with unspoken pleas. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I know it's hard, Mom, but I have to think about my mental health too. Being around her, even indirectly, would bring back a lot of pain." My mom reached out, touching my hand gently. "I understand, dear. I just wish things were different." "So do I, Mom. So do I," I whispered, feeling a familiar ache in my heart. That conversation with my mom stayed with me for days. It wasn't just about making a choice, it was about standing by it, even when it was questioned by those closest to me. One evening, while putting the kids to bed, my eldest asked, "Mommy, why don't we ever see Auntie?" Her question caught me off guard. "Well, honey, sometimes people have disagreements, and it's better for them to stay apart." "Like when I don't want to play with Tommy because he took my toy?" she asked. "Something like that," I replied, packing her in. Lying in bed later that night, I thought about my daughter's innocent question. My decision not only affected me, but also shaped the perception of my children. It was a sobering thought, but I knew I had to stand my ground for the sake of my own well-being and for the healthy environment I wanted for my children. They deserved a mother who was whole, not fragmented by the ghosts of her past. As days turned into weeks, The initial storm of family opinions gradually settled into a quiet but persistent hum in the background of our lives. Despite the support from James and the joy our children brought, there were moments when doubt crept in, whispering what ifs and could have beens. One such evening, while the kids were at a sleepover and James and I were enjoying a quiet dinner, he broached the subject that had been lingering in the air. "You've been distant lately. Is it about your sister again?" he asked, his eyes reflecting a mix of concern and understanding. I put down my fork, the truth spilling out. Part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh. But then I remember the pain, the betrayal, and I just can't bring myself to face her, not even for the sake of her kids. James reached across the table, taking my hand. "It's okay to have these feelings, you're human. But don't forget, you make this decision for valid reasons. Your peace of mind is important too." I nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. "I know, it's just hard when your own family questions your choices. We can't control what others think or feel, but we can control how we react and how we let it affect us and our family," he said gently. His words were a reminder of the strength I had found in myself and in our life together. The path I had chosen was not an easy one, but it prioritized my healing and the well-being of the family James and I had built. A few days later, during a phone call with my dad, he hesitantly mentioned my sister again. "I just thought you should know. Your sister's been asking about you. She's worried, despite everything," he said softly. I felt a twinge in my heart, but my resolve remained strong. "Tell her I'm fine, Dad, but that's all. Please, I don't want any more messages or updates." After hanging up the phone, I realized that while the past would always be a part of me, it did not define me. My choices, difficult as they were, had led me to a place of growth and newfound strength. I had learned to prioritize my own well-being and that of my immediate family. Though the future was uncertain and the path to forgiveness unclear, I found comfort in the love and stability that surrounded me now. Months had passed since I last heard from my sister. Life with James and our children continued to be a source of joy and stability. Yet the echoes of the past still resonated, a reminder of the journey I had been on. One sunny afternoon, while watching the kids play in the backyard, James joined me with 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one and smiled. "You seem more at peace these days," he remarked. I took a sip, feeling the warmth of the coffee and his presence. "I am. It's been a journey, but I think I'm finally learning to let go of the past." "That's good to hear. You know, no matter what, I'm proud of how you've handled everything," he said, his eyes full of admiration. I leaned against him, grateful for his unwavering support. "Thanks, James. I couldn't have done it without you." As we sat in comfortable silence, I reflected on the changes within me. The bitterness and pain had faded, replaced by a sense of acceptance and inner peace. It wasn't about forgetting the past, but about choosing not to let it control my present and future. Later that week, while sorting through some old boxes, I came across a photo of my sister and me in our younger days. For the first time in a long while, I looked at it without the sting of betrayal. Instead, there was a recognition of the bond we once shared and an acknowledgement of the separate paths we had taken. That evening, as James and I put the kids to bed, our youngest asked, "Mommy, do you have a sister?" I paused, tucking her in. "Yes, honey, I do. But sometimes, even with family, people grow apart." "Will you ever see her again?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. I kissed her forehead, a bittersweet smile on my lips. "Maybe one day, sweetie. But for now, we have our own happy little family, and that's what matters." As I turned off the lights, I realized how far I had come. The journey through pain and betrayal had led me to a place of strength and resilience. My family, James, and our children were my anchor, my source of unconditional love and support. Lying in bed that night, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter of my life involving my sister would always be a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had moved forward, not just moved on, and in doing so, I had found a deeper understanding of myself and what truly mattered in life. My heart was at peace, knowing that the future held promise and hope, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next with my loving family by my side. My brother is dead, and here you are thinking about such things. I can't believe it. I can't stay with you anymore. My husband Jaden shouted at me during the funeral, but I knew he was just hiding his true intentions. His body carried the scent of a perfume, the same one his late brother's wife always wore. I want a divorce. Divorce me immediately. Okay, let's get a divorce then. For a moment, my husband was stunned. He couldn't believe I accepted so easily, but then he started to grin, as if he thought he could now be happy with his late brother's wife, free from me. But it won't be that easy. I whispered those words so quietly that no one could hear. My name is Stella. I live with my husband Jaden and my mother-in-law. My parents have already passed away, and I have no siblings. My mother-in-law welcomed me warmly as if I were her own daughter. I was overjoyed to finally have a family after spending so much time alone and depressed, with no one to lean on. I loved and deeply appreciated her. Jaden had a younger brother, Bobby, who was married to a young woman. They lived near my in-laws. When I joined the family, Bobby welcomed me with the same kindness as my mother-in-law. We lived close to each other, and our families often traveled together. I was happy with my new life, but those happy days were coming to an end. One day, Bobby was rushed to the emergency room. I left work immediately and hurried to the hospital. In the hospital room, I found my mother-in-law crying. I sat by her side and asked about his condition. He seemed to have passed the critical stage, but the doctor said it was still too early to tell. I held my mother-in-law's shoulder, comforting her as best I could. Still, there was no sign of my husband or Bobby's wife. I wished they would arrive soon because my mother-in-law needed them too. Jaden was on an urgent business trip but was on his way to the hospital now. My mother-in-law was distressed, unable to reach Bobby's wife, Karen. I wondered if there was any way to contact her, but there was nothing we could do but wait. Time seemed to stretch on endlessly. Finally, we heard footsteps approaching the hospital room. It was my husband, and with him was Karen. He explained that he had brought her to the hospital. I was relieved that they were finally there. But then, I felt something off. My husband, he smelled different. Was he wearing perfume? The scent was familiar. I looked over and saw Karen holding my brother-in-law's hand. A few days later, Bobby passed away. The wake and the funeral went by without incident, and things settled down somewhat. I noticed that Jaden was taking care of Karen with unusual attentiveness. Of course, she must be in more pain than anyone, having lost her husband, and surely she needed emotional support. But they seemed closer than necessary, even enjoying each other's company. I began to doubt their relationship, feeling guilty for my suspicions. Maybe I was just looking at things the wrong way. After all, it was better for Karen to be happy than to be depressed. So I tried to push those thoughts aside. But perhaps I should have paid more attention. Not long after, Jaden dropped a shocking revelation on me. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice serious. I was folding laundry at the time. I stopped and turned to face him, sensing the weight of what he was about to say. Ever since my brother passed away, there's been something missing in me, he confessed. It's a wound that won't heal, not even when I'm with you. I was shocked, to be honest. I thought I was taking care of my husband in my own way, trying to offer him the same support that my mother-in-law had given me. But it clearly wasn't enough. It hadn't been long since my brother-in-law passed away, and I was trying hard not to show how upset I was. I nodded along, listening to the rest of what Jaden had to say. But I've met someone who fills that emptiness, he continued. My heart sank as I braced myself for his next words. It's Karen, Bobby's wife. She's grieving too, and we found comfort in each other. There are some voids that only those who've lost someone can fill. His words were like a dagger to my heart. I tried to deny what I was hearing, to push away the rising panic. The love of my life is Karen, he confessed. We just met in the wrong order. Please divorce me. My head spun. What the hell was he talking about? My mind raced back to the hospital, to the moment they had shown up together, both smelling of the same perfume. Karen is my destiny, he insisted. I know that now. I felt a wave of disbelief and betrayal wash over me. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? The words slipped out before I could stop them. What do you mean? He snapped. Are you accusing me of having an affair? I was taken aback by the coldness in his voice, but I couldn't stop myself from explaining what had been gnawing at me, the perfume, the way he took care of her, how close they had become. The more I talked, the more I laid out the evidence of his infidelity. Jaden's mood darkened, his anger flaring. We're still grieving, and you're talking about this? I can't believe it. I can't be with you anymore. With those words, he walked away. As I watched his back disappear, The full weight of what he had said crashed down on me. He had just told me that I was not his life partner, and the shock and pain hit me all at once. All I could do was cry. The pain was unbearable, and I felt like I had to do something, anything to keep myself from falling apart. I reached for Bobby's belongings. He had loved photography and kept a meticulously organized album of his photos. I opened it, flipping through pictures of us on trips together. The happiness captured in those photos felt like a distant memory, and I feared I had destroyed any chance of reclaiming it. As I turned the pages, something slipped out from between them, an envelope. A few days later, Jaden and I finalized our divorce. When my mother-in-law learned about Jaden's intentions and the divorce, she broke down in tears and apologized to me. "I'm so sorry for my foolish son," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "I know you'll find happiness, Stella. Even though we're no longer in the same family, you and I will always be family. If you ever need anything, please call me immediately." She had always been good to me, and she had nothing to apologize for. It broke my heart to see such a kind woman cry, and leaving her behind was the hardest part of all. After I moved out of my parents-in-law's house and started living alone, I was overwhelmed by a sense of loneliness. It wasn't the first time I'd lived alone. I had done so before marriage, but this time, the solitude felt almost unbearable. However, that loneliness didn't last long. 2 months later, I received a call from my mother-in-law. She told me that my ex-husband and Karen had moved out, leaving her alone in a house that now felt too big and empty. She was thinking about selling the house and starting a new life on her own. But moving away would mean leaving behind the neighborhood and the friends she could rely on. Her voice was tinged with sadness when she asked if it would be all right for her to move closer to me. Hearing the loneliness in her voice, I suggested something I expected. We should move in together. At first she was hesitant, not wanting to impose. But I couldn't bear the thought of her being alone, and eventually, I convinced her. In the end, we built an apartment and moved in together. Since then, we've grown closer, more like mother and daughter than ever before. Our days together were peaceful and life seemed to be moving forward. But then, one day, I received a call from an unknown number. To my surprise, it was Karen. "What do you want after all these years?" I asked, bracing myself. "How come the house is gone? And what's this about you being adopted?" She shouted, her voice sharp and accusing. I felt my heart skip a beat at her sudden outburst. The house my mother-in-law sold had been replaced by a new building, which was to be expected. As for the adoption, it was something my mother-in-law had suggested when we decided to move in together. She wanted us to be a real family, and I had agreed. But Karen's tone made it clear that she was upset, perhaps even resentful. I began to suspect that she had been after Bobby's inheritance all along. The inheritance that my mother-in-law had now passed on to me. The thought that Karen might have married my ex-husband for Bobby's money crossed my mind more than once. Realizing the time had come to address this, I spoke firmly. "You have no right to tell me what to do. We're not family anymore, and you should be grateful I didn't ask for alimony for the affair, but if you push me, I will." Karen seemed taken aback, but quickly recovered, her voice laced with venom. "You accused Jaden of adultery even before we were together. You made him want to leave you. You should be ashamed of yourself." I scoffed, her response so predictable that I couldn't help but counter it with a touch of sarcasm. "What if I told you I have proof?" Silence fell on the other end of the line. I had found the letter, the one that had slipped out of Bobby's photo album the day my husband left me. The letter was filled with Bobby's bitterness and pain. "The doctor told me I don't have much time," the letter began. "By the time you read this, I won't be around anymore. This letter contains hidden evidence of my wife's affair with Jaden. If Jaden or Karen finds this letter, they can destroy it all, and I will have failed miserably. But if you, Stella, find this letter, let my wife and my brother be punished for what they deserve." The silence on the phone was deafening. I knew Karen had no comeback for this. My brother-in-law's letter also revealed his deep feelings about his wife, Karen. He wrote about how, after we got married, Karen quit her job and seemed to think it was his responsibility to make her happy. She just sat around the house, doing nothing. When he suggested they should help each other out more, she got upset. There were days when she shut him out completely, especially when she felt he wasn't earning enough money. He confessed that it was hard for him to accept how much he had changed. He tried to work harder, hoping that if he made her life easier, she might return to the person he once loved. But in the end, he realized that the woman she had become was her true self all along. He felt ashamed that he hadn't seen it sooner. If Jaden and Karen hadn't gotten involved, he wrote, I wouldn't have tried to make things worse. But I can't let her misdeeds go any further. I have to take action for my late brother-in-law. I'll destroy them both. Bobby had seen through Karen a long time ago and had gathered all the evidence. Now it was up to me to carry out his wish. I could almost hear Karen shaking on the other end of the line, trying to sound strong, but her voice trembled. There's no way you can ask for alimony now that we're married, she spat. That's a bluff. You're just trying to scare me, but it's not going to work. I'll sue you for blackmail. Be my guest, I replied calmly. But remember, paying for a lawyer costs a lot. You might think it's a waste of money, but I'm prepared. You seem to have studied the division of property, but you overlooked adultery. So knave. You thought Bobby didn't know anything, didn't you? Karen hung up violently. Later, I filed a claim for alimony against my ex-husband and his new wife through a lawyer. After a while, my ex-husband reached out to my mother. Apparently, he wanted to leave Karen and live with her again. Karen's true nature, combined with her anger over the alimony charges, had made her unbearable to live with. My ex-husband's voice on the phone was so tired, it was hard to believe they were newlyweds. Like my late brother-in-law, he had failed to see Karen's true nature. It's amazing what blood can do to you, my mother remarked as she sat next to me, listening to the phone conversation. Come on, Mom, I didn't know she was like that, my ex-husband pleaded. I can't live with her anymore. I just want to be with you and Stella again. What the hell? My mother snapped. You're the one who said she was the one and left Stella. I won't allow a man who hurt my daughter to live with us. If you're really sorry, you'll first pay the alimony. If you do anything to me or Stella, I'll call the police. No, Mom, please, he begged, his voice pathetic. Despite his pleas, my mother couldn't forgive him. But she did offer him a final act of mercy. If you really can't pay the alimony, she said, I'll pay it for you. But in exchange, you must forego all inheritance after my death and never appear in front of us again. He had no choice but to accept. We never heard from him or Karen again. My mother and I continued to live together, finding joy in each other's company. We celebrated our happy moments, comforted each other in our sadness, and even strengthened our bond by working through our disagreements. Bobby, I thought to myself, I've avenged you. Although Bobby and I are no longer connected by blood, the bond I share with my mother is stronger than ever. We'll continue to live happily together as a family. My husband Taylor is a real piece of work. Despite borrowing $50,000 from my dad, he's not only avoiding repayment but also considering filing for bankruptcy to dodge it. If I declare bankruptcy, I don't have to pay it back, right? Serves him right, he says, as smug as can be. He really has no idea what life would be like after bankruptcy. I'm Michelle, 32 years old. Taylor and I have been married for 5 years, and for better or worse, we've led an average life together. We don't have kids, but we have a dog instead. We mostly spend our time with each other and our furry friend. Seeing our families is rare since they live far away, so we usually visit them during summer or Christmas vacations. Taylor always makes a fuss when it's time to go to my parents' home. Hey Taylor, you're coming with me to my parents' house for the holidays, right? Oh no, if we're going anywhere, let's go to my parents' place. We've been to your parents many times. It's time we go to mine. We've talked about this. It's just a hassle. And there's nothing to do at your parents' house. Don't you think you should apologize to my dad about the money? Our life is possible because of him. He even helped us with that debt crisis. Again with that? You're so annoying. Taylor sighed loudly and left the room. When we first got married, my dad gave us the down payment for our house and later lent Taylor part of the capital for his startup business. I've been slowly repaying the money for the house, but the $50,000 Taylor borrowed for his business remains unpaid. I know Taylor's business is struggling and times are tough, but that's a different issue altogether. Taylor's lack of gratitude towards my dad irks me every day. Then one day, something happened. I got a rare phone call from my mom, who usually only texts. Hello, Mom. Is now a good time? Yeah, I'm fine. You usually text. What's up? Actually, your dad, Daniel, collapsed. Dad collapsed? You're joking. He wasn't feeling well for a few days. He's stable for now, but if you can, could you come home? I get it. I'll talk to Taylor and head back home as soon as possible. When I explained the situation to Taylor, he reluctantly agreed to the trip just this once. But there's another issue I have to think about, Rocky. I called our regular vet to board him, but they're fully booked, I said. So what's the plan? I'm thinking of hiring a pet sitter. At my words, Taylor let out an exasperated sigh. What? A pet sitter? Give me a break. I can't stand the idea of a stranger in our home. We don't have a choice. Rocky needs his walks, his bathroom breaks, his meals. Absolutely not. They'll be fine for a day. Stop relying on services like that. Are you kidding me? If we leave him alone for a day, he'll get stressed out. We couldn't find common ground, and the conversation was going nowhere. Then Taylor seemed to have an idea and exclaimed, "Ah, I've got it. I've thought of something great." What is it? Why not ask Isabella? Why would Isabella be involved? She just got divorced, right? And she's been complaining about not having work. Let's ask her to take care of Rocky. While we were gone, we decided to ask Isabella to look after Rocky as a part-time job. Honestly, I was completely against it. The last time Isabella visited, money disappeared from my wallet. I had withdrawn $300 that morning, and by the time Isabella left, it was gone. When I told Taylor, he dismissed it, saying it must be a misunderstanding. Since I had no concrete evidence, I couldn't do much, but I was certain it was Isabella. I didn't trust her and didn't want her in our home. However, with the trip back home imminent and Taylor firmly against hiring a pet sitter, we were out of options. We ended up asking Isabella. I gathered my always ready stash of $3,000 and gift cards, hiding them in a drawer. I slipped a piece of paper into the drawer to know if anyone opened it, and of course, I didn't tell Taylor. Otherwise, I couldn't feel at ease letting Isabella into our home. We asked Isabella to take care of our dog and headed to my parents' house. Thankfully, Dad's condition stabilized and we could talk to him. When we returned, I told Taylor about the drawer trick. As expected, the paper had fallen and $2,000 along with gift cards were missing from the $3,000. I had told Isabella not to enter the bedroom, but I had suspected she might steal something. I sighed and told Taylor, "See, now do you get why I didn't want Isabella in our home?" "Well, she's having money troubles too, so a little bit off." "Cut it out. We're not exactly rolling in it either, Taylor. You owe money to Dad, remember? That's a different issue. Just call Isabella over here now." Taylor reluctantly dialed her number. When Isabella arrived and we confronted her about the money, she admitted to everything, including the previous time with my wallet. She promised to pay it back, and we let her go. But my anger hadn't subsided. Taylor then sat down next to me. "I'll make sure Isabella doesn't come around anymore. But what you did was jaw-dropping, Michelle. You're surprisingly mean-spirited. Setting up a trap like that for Isabella isn't something a grown adult should do." "Wait a minute. Are you taking your own sister's side even after all this?" "Isabella's in the wrong too. But what really turned me off was how you doubt your own family and set up such an elaborate scheme. Don't joke around. If you believe me about her stealing money last time, maybe we could have prevented this. Just like you don't want the pet sitter in our house, I don't want Isabella in our house." "Well, you're so narrow-minded. Don't you have anything else to say before blaming me?" It felt like he was saying it was my fault for setting up a trap to catch Isabella, who had stolen twice. I was angry and frustrated. After that, Taylor's and my relationship started to deteriorate, with more and more days of not speaking. The tipping point came when Taylor handed me a piece of paper after returning from work. "What's this?" "You know what it is. Divorce papers. You want a divorce." "I've had enough of you over this Isabella thing. I don't want to be with you anymore. There's no point in being married. Let's divorce. This happened because of your sister, you know. Don't shift the blame onto me. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. Just sign it." No discussion, just Taylor pushing his own viewpoint. I grew disgusted with him and agreed to the divorce. It was clear Taylor would keep taking Isabella's side in the future, so I figured it was best to cut ties with him sooner rather than later. A few days later, the divorce went through. We sold the house we lived in for 5 years and barely divided our assets. I told Taylor to use that money to keep making monthly payments on his debt to Dad, and he agreed. And so our married life came to an end. Months later, Dad passed away from illness, and just like that, I inherited the right to collect Taylor's debt repayments. But the following month, Taylor fell behind. I did a little digging through mutual friends and found out his business was failing. He had mentioned he was struggling with the company just before we divorced. Knowing Taylor was in trouble, I decided to give him a break and wait one more month. However, when there was still no transfer from Taylor, I lost patience and called him. "Hello, it's Michelle." "What's up, Michelle? What do you need?" "What do you mean? What do I need?" "It's about repaying Dad. You haven't paid since last month." "Oh, is that all? Well, I'm not paying anymore." "Excuse me." Caught off guard by his unexpected response, my thoughts froze for a moment. Taylor, without any remorse, continued. "Why should I? My father-in-law's dead, right? No point in paying back a dead man." "What are you talking about? That's ridiculous. I inherited Dad's right to collect the debt. So now I'm the creditor. Understand?" "I don't care. I said I'm not paying." "I can't pay." Suddenly furious, Taylor started yelling over the phone. "I'm struggling with my business too, you know. Why should I repay a debt to a dead person? It's a waste of money. Don't joke around. How can you even say that? Your current business exists because of Dad." "Yeah, sure, he helped back then. But he's dead now. Only you would benefit if I repaid the debt. So why would I do that?" At that moment, rage surged through my veins. Our parting wasn't amicable, and I knew about his current economic situation. If only he would sincerely apologize for the delayed repayment, but he was showing no remorse, let alone an apology. Worse still, he seemed to think he was off the hook for repayment now that Dad was gone. I was infuriated by Taylor's convenient thinking. I wouldn't let this go. He would repay every penny. "Just to clarify, Dad's death doesn't absolve you from repayment," I said in a stern voice. "Annoying," Taylor muttered irritably. "I told you, only you benefit from me paying back. There's no way I'm paying back $50,000. "All right, then I'll take appropriate measures. Is that okay?" Suddenly, Taylor erupted in laughter over the phone. "Then I'll just file for bankruptcy." "Bankruptcy? Yeah, if I file for bankruptcy, I won't have to pay back anything. Serves you right. You think that will save you? You better repay. You're just trying to get money out of me. I can't possibly pay back that amount." "So you never intended to repay it?" "If the business had gone well, sure, I would have paid. But it didn't. Not even sorry towards Dad." "Why should I apologize to a dead person? Both you and your sister are irresponsible with money." "Disappointing. Say what you want. I've got my trump card. Bankruptcy." "Fine. Go ahead and file for bankruptcy, but you'll regret it. Thanks for the advice. Bye." With that, he happily hung up the phone. Taylor seemed to think that filing for bankruptcy would free him from his debt, but he failed to consider the downsides that come with it. If declaring bankruptcy wiped out all your debts, everyone drowning in debt would be doing it happily. I had a friend who had to declare bankruptcy because they co-signed a loan once. It was a heart-wrenching process, and I saw the struggle up close. So I knew how tough bankruptcy could be, and I decided not to tell Taylor about it. Later, it seemed Taylor really did go through with the bankruptcy process. I got a text saying, "Debts are gone. Serves them right." I didn't reply. I just waited to see how things would play out, pretty much expecting Taylor to self-destruct. A few weeks later, just as I expected, a desperate call came in from Taylor. "Michelle, please help me. Long time no see. What's up?" "I'm screwed. Yeah, I got rid of my debts, but now I can't even live a normal life." "Oh, that's unfortunate." "Unfortunate? You don't get it. I'm really in trouble here." Well, declaring bankruptcy is a last resort only for those with no other options. Taylor, who clearly didn't understand the situation, needed it spelled out plainly. "Listen, bankruptcy is the last resort. They'll take all your assets, cars, electronics, everything. Your credit cards won't work and you'll be blacklisted." "How do you know all this?" "I saw a friend go through it. It was a nightmare." "What? So you knew this would happen and you didn't stop me?" "Are you finally getting it? This is no joke. I thought I could just reset my debts and get back to normal life. This isn't what I envisioned. Not my problem. It is your fault. If you told me how hard bankruptcy is from the start." At this point, Taylor was trying to shift the blame, so I gave him a reality check. "Don't you get it? You made the choice without doing any research, even after I warned you. You made your bed, now lie in it. And you're asking for help now? That's pretty cheeky. I'm your ex-husband in need. Isn't that enough? Ex-husband. You didn't even show up to Dad's funeral, and you've never been grateful for anything. Why would I help trash like you? Karma's a bitch, isn't it? Trash? Who are you calling trash? Just to make it clear, you're in a really bad spot right now. Don't expect to live like you used to. Bankruptcy doesn't offer a bright future. You chose this path. Now live with it for the rest of your miserable life. You damn fool. I let out all my pent-up frustration and hung up the phone. I immediately blocked his number and blocked him on social media. That's how I finally cut off all ties with Taylor. As for him, word has it that he's living a pretty miserable life. He thought he could just wipe the slate clean with bankruptcy and start fresh. He may have acted like he had it all together, but reality isn't that kind. Since he's on the blacklist, he obviously can't get a loan for anything. On top of that, it seems he owed a lot of money to his friends and hasn't paid them back. He's been contacting other friends to borrow money, but no one will lend him anything now that they know his situation. In fact, almost all of his friends have cut ties with him, and it seems he's living a lonely life now. It's nothing less than poetic justice. As for Isabella, it turns out she wasn't just stealing from me but also from her friends. Apparently, she was recently arrested by the police. The rumors spread in the neighborhood and she lost her job too. I'm so relieved to see those two people I can't stand both get their comeuppance. I'm really glad I got a divorce when I did. I'll never have to deal with those siblings again. If I ever date someone in the future, I won't make the same mistakes. I'm determined to be more discerning in judging people and building better relationships.